I'm resident of Collinwood, and joining me here tonight is at Fred Barnabas. So I gotta ask you, man, when did you get into Dark Shadows?
1982.
Oh wow, wow! Tonight, guys, we're gonna discuss the Barnabas Collins Ark. So Jonathan Frid is cast as vampire Barnabas Collins, and he's released by a man named Willie Loomis, who's brought to town by Jason McGuire. Willie accidentally discovers the secret room in the mausoleum. We see the hand come out of the coffin, and he shows up, you know, the next night, literally, and knocks on the doorstep, knocks on the door, and there he is coming in after introducing himself to Mrs. Johnson. What were your thoughts about him?
Initially, well, my mom was a first generation fan, so I
Nice.
had heard about the show for years prior to actually discovering it.
Cool.
And in syndication, 210 was the first episode. So when I saw him with the hat on and he comes to the door, like you just said, I already knew he was a vampire. I just wanted to see how it played out.
Right. I think that like the telltale signs are there, like the coffin, the hand coming out of the coffin. You know this guy's a vampire. I mean, if you've seen Bela Lugosi, if you've seen Christopher Lee, you know this guy's a vampire. But the one thing I'll say is Fred himself is no Bela Lugosi. He's not Christopher Lee. They're not. He's not Dracula. He may be dressed in black, sure, but this is not Count Dracula. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I think Fred purposely did it that way because, let's face it, Lee scares the hell out of you. I mean, I
Yes.
have nightmares about him once a week, and I'm not joking. Lugosi, the 1931 Dracula is based on the stage play from the 20s that Lugosi starred in. It's very slow moving. There's not a lot of action, but at the very end is when that portrayal really picks up when there's the confrontation with Van Helsing.
Right.
Frid, I always saw Barnabas as a friend, even
Right.
when he was a total jerk. I
Right.
always saw him as somebody that I could identify with, and I wanted to see where he was going to end up.
Him. So he introduces himself to Elizabeth after she comes down the steps. She points out the resemblance of the portrait between him and the portrait, and Fred just does an amazing job interacting with her, with Victoria. I want to get your thoughts on after this interaction with David at the old house, because David tells him about Josette, tells him about how Josette would protect him, anybody who was a Collins. Now we've met the Phoenix prior to this. The Phoenix knew Josette. So we met one person who knew Josette already in the Phoenix. Now we're not only meeting someone who knows Josette, we're meeting someone who was intimate with her. And you could tell that with Fred sort of sells this, in my opinion, with his interaction with the portrait. What are your thoughts?
I agree. That's a very powerful scene, but I think he underplays it a little bit purposely, so we really don't know what the
Right.
relationship is between Josette and his father, who we find out later is Joshua. I
Right.
think he just says, "Why didn't you protect me?"
Right. Yep.
And and we know when we go back to 1795 that there was no way she could have protected him,
Right.
which is even more tragic than the story already is.
It is 1795, though it's not planned. You know what I mean? It's real interesting because there's so many. there's so many mentions to a potential of it going in that direction. Alexander Isles, Victoria Winters, she had said, I fear something's going to happen to me. And that was during the beginning episodes, during the Phoenix arc, where she said she felt something was going to happen to her during the seance. And I don't really count a ghost possessing you, or jumping into your body, if you will, as something happening to you. To me, that the happening was her going back in 1795 for, but I know I'm jumping, so I apologize. But so, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Frid, Barnabas Collins, Willie Loomis, John Carlin, their relationship? How good was it, man?
Well, Fred and Carlin were the best of friends in real
Right.
life, which is crazy. I mean, I remember seeing Carlin in an interview in the mid 80s on Lifetime TV when Lifetime was totally different than it is now.
Right.
And they were taking calls. It was actually the Regis Philbin. He had a show on Lifetime, and he was taking live calls, and all of the calls were about Fred, because at that point, Fred was not really back out in the public eye. This is prior to him going on tour with Arsenic and Old Lace. He did a couple of conventions. He did some stuff in New York, but he really wasn't out there yet. Again, on his comeback, and it was sweet to hear Johnny Carlin call him Johnny,
Right.
and that was a term of endearment. You could tell that Carlin really liked this guy, and I mean the way they played off of each other. I mean, it's incredible. It's really a tour de force in acting.
It is. What's your favorite Barnabas Willie Loomis moment? Do you have one?
Oh man, I like that scene when Willie comes back after the Leviathan story is kind of winding down,
Right.
and he's in that trench coat, and he's been gone for a while, and he's got his confidence back, he's got his swagger, and then he gets pulled right back into it. It's kind of like Michael Corleone in The Godfather.
Right.
Willie's right back in the mix, and you can see episode after episode as Carlin's demeanor changes again, and he's that same old weasel again.
At Fred Barnabas, I love that comparison. How you compared uh, that to Godfather Part Three, where Michael Corleone standing in the kitchen. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. That's a great comparison. I love that, man. My favorite scene is when, after they find out Maggie's dead, or they're told Maggie's dead, I should say, and Willie Loomis, John Carlin, is in his ear, like Jiminy Cricket times 10, like guilt ridden him, like, we killed that girl, Barnabas. We killed her. And I was like, man, is Willie asking for it or what?
Yeah, those early episodes were probably some of the creepiest.
Right, right.
Before Fred really went full throttle on the reluctant vampire, they were
Yeah.
kind of around early episodes. He could be one way, but he played a different way. You never really knew where Barnabas really stood until Julia Hoffman shows up, and that changed everything.
Hey, I'm sorry to ask this of you. Can you repeat what you just fully said? Because you cut out a bit. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm trying to think now what I did say. uh, what was your question?
I had asked you what were your thoughts on Willie Loomis was in Barnabas's ear, and you were making the point about it. He wasn't the full-fledged sympathetic vampire yet.
I think that changed, it flipped really when
Right.
Julia shows up. I
Right.
mean, at that point, I think, Fred had made that decision, and the writers could see it. And at that point, the script changed. the character of Barnabas was evolving at that point.
Man. I always feel that where I first felt sorry for Barnabas, for me, from a viewer standpoint, was when he did come out of the coffin and talk to Josette's portrait, because I had never seen somebody be that endearing to a portrait, to a ghost, literally. That he's, yes, he's hurt, but at the same time, he's sort of happy and relieved. He's not, I don't sense anger in him at that given point. So I did feel for him at that moment. I think Barnabas was always meant to be sympathetic because of how Fred would give off these mannerisms of the character.
I agree, but there was always menace too.
Right, yeah.
In those early episodes, like when there's a storm and there's a flash at the door, and Nancy Barrett and Alexandra are in the drawing room, and we cut to the opening credits, and then we come back and it's Barnabas.
Yep.
I mean, he's telling this beautiful story that is romantic, but there's also that tinge of he could go up at any minute. I mean, he could just go off and take them both out. You know?
Right.
And I think Fred was good at that.
Right. That's a great point, because he's talking about how Josette's death. He's describing the death of her death at Widow's Hill, and it's during a violent storm. And you're right, they're in the great house and the lights are all out. It's a great scene. And you're right, it feels like, hey, he could just take him out if he wanted to. It does sort of give that feel.
Very creepy.
It is. He's really, I'll tell you where he's creepy too, is with Alexander, and they're discussing the pyramids of Egypt in the old house.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
It's just like, Vicky, just get out of there, girl. Just get out of there, right?
Fred was brilliant in ways he didn't even realize he was being brilliant, because he couldn't remember his lines. The character of Barnabas was already anxious enough, and that played into Fred's abilities, because they were both nervous.
Right. I love how that she says, well, you missed one point, and he's like, what's that? He goes, the pyramids in Egypt were designed to be a tomb.
Tombs, yes.
And he's like, you're right. This house was not designed to be. He says it like with the minute, like, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, that whole scene is one of the highlights of the early episodes with Barnabas.
I tell you what did you think of? He visits Maggie in the restaurant. There's no reflection, obviously. And he's just sitting there, and you can hear the dogs howling, and he's as cool as a cucumber about it, but not Maggie.
Well, I mean, that's Catherine Lee Scott's favorite scene in the entire show.
Oh, wow.
The interaction between her and Fred there it's palpable. Right. I mean, and he never drinks that coffee, if you notice. I mean, he puts it up to his mouth, but you never see the liquid go in.
No.
He knew how to do all these nuances with his acting. I mean, I can't say enough about Jonathan Frid. I've met him. He's just he's brilliant. I mean, he's a very underrated actor that deserved a big career in Hollywood, but unfortunately he was typecast, and it never happened.
I'll ask you a real good question when we get near the end of this, but we're going to continue on. But when you look at Barnabas going forward, he meets eventually, after Maggie's alleged death, he later meets Dr. Julia Hoffman. And this woman, I mean, what a presence Grayson Hall was, right?
Oh, absolutely.
There's
something about her persona that makes her attractive. in a sense. And I always wanted Barnabas to pick up on that, but he has a habit of loving unrequited love, and he's not happy unless the girl doesn't want him. And obviously Julia wanted him.
Right. She did. I think Grayson Hall does a great job of selling how Julia feels about Barnabas. You know,
Subtly.
right. It's very there. It's right there, and it's like I don't think he's ignoring it. I think he just thinks it's get out of here. Like no, no. It's like,
I hate to coin a phrase from our former Orange guy, but that just wasn't his type, which is too bad because they would have been a good couple. And then, ironically, Sam Hall had him married off in the end of the series, so
right,
which would have been great to see if we would have made it past 1841.
right. I think I think Julia. I'll say this. I think Julia knows where Barnabas is buried, and I'll get to that at the end of this. But because I want to ask you something. It, with Barnabas and Julia, he's basically it's him, her, and they're both sort of bossing Willie around.
Right.
Poor John Carlin, right? He's just like he's taking it at this point. And when Sarah helps Maggie escape Wincliffe because she already helped her escape the old house, you meet this. Here's Sarah Collins. Here's his sister, and he she literally when she brings Maggie into the Blue Whale. I mean, they've been treating Barnabas. She's been treating Barnabas for some time. It backfires. I've always joked with the picture where Jonathan turns old in the series as Barnabas. I had this joke on Facebook. Julia, do you accept AARP? Because that's what it looks like he's asking her.
I can tell you as a 8-year-old, that was terrifying.
It was. Did you like it more in a series when he turned old or House of Dark Shadows?
I think House of Dark Shadows is an animal all of its own, but yes, Curtis was able to throw everything in the kitchen sink, and he
Yeah.
had a budget, and things looked great, and everybody looked great. And yeah, I think Dick Smith, who did both makeup jobs, was uh, uh, Jonathan's makeup in HODS was a precursor to Dick Smith and Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman. If
Right.
you see that film, you will notice that Dustin Hoffman bears a striking resemblance to our one and only Jonathan Frid.
I've never seen it, but I'll take your word for it, and I will. I've never seen that movie, so and that's something. I'm. I know we touched on House of Dark Shadows real quick, but we are gonna. I will bring eventually because we're not through here by a long shot. I'm gonna bring Fred Barnabas back on. We'll discuss the movies as well because I do want to discuss those with you. But for now, with Barnabas, with Julia sort of just trying to keep him away from Victoria because I agree with you. Julia wants him for herself, and he wants no part of her. So you got this woman who's trying to like poison him now, and it's just like at every turn, Barnabas has got to feel like Julius Caesar at this point.
As a kid, I was really upset with Julia when I watched those because I was always rooting for Barnabas. As an adult, you see that Barnabas has this almost like he's almost Jimmy Stewart's character in Vertigo for the first several months. I mean, he's just so obsessed with Josette that
Yeah.
nothing will stand in his way.
Yep.
And so seeing that as a kid, yeah, I was upset. I wanted him to get the girl, but you know, Julia was pulling a Catherine Wentworth from Dallas there. Catherine was gonna have Bobby Ewing no matter what. So that's
Right.
kind of the feeling I get from when Julia was pulling those shenanigans.
If Maggie doesn't escape, hypothetically, do you think Barnabas honestly kills her?
She becomes a vampire, and
Right.
then she hates him.
Right.
She can never be his bride, so to speak, once she's one of the undead.
Right. I don't think by killing, and I should have specified, so I apologize. I don't think he would have murdered her. Like, just snapped her neck, or, like, you know what I mean, got rid of her. I agree with you. I think he would have sooner turned her or tried to turn her, but I can't see him killing her because this is the one woman who is literally a constant reminder of Josette to him. So I can't see him killing her, you know?
I think there is a point there though where the audience thinks that he might do it.
I do
I
too.
mean, he almost kills David, for God's sakes. I mean, before 1795 is like the Old Testament. Then
Yeah,
when we get back from 1795, it's like the New Testament. Jonathan and Barnabas is all about peace and love and bringing the poor into Collinwood and everything. I mean, there's just such a transition post 1795. A lot of his menace is kind of taken away.
yeah. I think he would have killed David. I think he would have killed David if he's not getting constantly nagged by Julia. Like, literally, almost, he's undead, but he's getting nagged to death, so to speak. And so he goes, you know what? Screw it. I'll drive the kid crazy. He does a good job. What did you think of him just driving him nuts?
Well, there's that one scene when David finally gets out of the mausoleum,
Yeah,
and as soon as he comes running out, you're like, "Oh God, this kid got away now!" And Barnabas is right there,
yeah,
and that look in Fred's eyes and that grin he has on his face, and then it cuts to the credits. I mean, as a kid, and we used to watch him every day, Monday through Friday. So that was the end of the episode. I mean, I was I was I was a little frightened for David at that point.
yeah. Because you're not sure, you're not sure what he's going to do to this kid. Is he going to just, strangle him right there, right?
It's crazy.
It
It's
is.
very risky storytelling for daytime TV, let alone television in the 60s.
It is. I think Dark Shadows, even before Barnabas, but especially after, took a lot of risk.
I think Dan was a visionary.
Yep.
He doesn't get a lot of credit either. I mean, Dan Curtis is brilliant. I mean, if you haven't seen Winds of War, you need to leave this video right now and go find it on YouTube. I mean, it's one of the best miniseries of the 80s, and if not all time. I mean, Dan is just is able to do so many different genres.
Yep.
He's missed. He's
Yeah.
very missed.
I think here, in many ways, Dan Curtis was really ahead of his time when it came to gothic horror.
Absolutely.
He knew exactly what he wanted to do to a degree, and he did it. And he made, in many ways, I love a director who's unapologetic, and he was like, Dark Shadows is the ultimate unapologetic series. It makes no effort to apologize, and I love Dan Curtis for doing it that way.
Ironically, in the 80s, Dan didn't want to have anything to do with DS.
And
He wanted to distance himself from horror in general. Frid was interviewed, in the late 80s, and he was visibly irritated that Dan would not acknowledge the show,
Yeah.
because Frid was proud of it,
Yeah.
and he thought Dan wasn't.
I think I'm going to sort of compare Dan Curtis and John Carpenter in two different ways. John Carpenter did not want to write Halloween 2. There's no secret to this. And I think though too, it's why he can't appreciate it, even though he wrote it. He didn't want to write it. Where it's not with Dan Curtis, he wanted to distance himself to such a degree he couldn't let himself or let others feel that he appreciated something he did really deep down appreciate.
Yeah, oh yeah. And the end of his life, I mean, hell, Dan spent the last 20 years of his life trying to bring Dark
Yeah,
Shadows back in one iteration after another. I mean, there was a Broadway musical being written at one point in the early 2000s.
yeah,
Um, I think he really loved it at that point, and he wanted to see it done the way that he felt it should have been done back in the 60s.
so Barnabas Collins, he kills Dr. Dave Woodard. Now Jason McGuire, we can say Jason McGuire had it coming. But him killing Dr. Woodard, man, that was interesting. What did you think of that?
Well, there's that famous line that Barnabas says about pain right before he shoots him with the syringe. Um, I don't. I think Dave had it coming too. I mean, you're not going to go toe to toe with a 175-year-old vampire and think it's going to work out.
Right,
And
right.
he had to kill him at that point. Dave was going to expose him. That's
Yep,
that's the beauty of the character of Barnabas Collins. He's got all these different facets. I mean, he is a murderer.
yep. I don't. Here's the weird thing, and I want to ask you how you. I don't. I could not bring myself to hate him for killing Dave Woodard.
No, I agree with you 100%.
It's like, you know what? This guy just wants to live his life. It's weird, but that's how I felt at the time when he did it.
Well, I can tell you I would have felt a little more sympathy for Robert Geringer than Peter Turgeon.
I would have too, actually.
Peter Turgeon, his portrayal. I mean, he might have been a great actor, but he wasn't good as Dave Woodward.
I think he's very. We're getting. It's sometimes with different actors, you get you don't get the full portrayal that the previous actor gave, and I think that's Peter Turgeon as Dave Woodard in a nutshell. He's not Robert. He's not Robert, and you can tell.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? No, I'm not just meaning for those to clarify to those at home. I'm not just meaning in look. I'm meaning in complete personality. It's not that. It's not just that. The doctor underwent a facelift, so to speak. He completely underwent a personality change with the recasting.
Yeah, I didn't miss him at all at that point.
Right? I gotta ask you this because I always found it strange. I forget who went in the mausoleum and heard this. I think it was Julia, I want to say. But in the mausoleum, there's laughing, and it's a woman laughing. It's not Sarah, it's not Josette, and it's so goddamn creepy. Is this now? I know Laura Parker wasn't cast at this point because this is pre 1795. This is before they go back. Is this Angelique laughing?
That's what fandom seems to think nowadays.
Right,
As a kid, I just felt it was Barnabas being his psychotic self.
right.
But looking back now, yeah, I mean, I that could be Angelique basically laughing, telling Julia that, my curse isn't going to be broken.
Yeah, here's where I didn't think it was Barnabas. Julia tells him about it. Of all things, I think she wanted to know. And really, I don't think she's telling him because she feels sorry. I think she's telling him because she wants him to know, hey, is there something you haven't told me here? Even though we ain't really on the best terms, because it's such a great interaction between Grayson Hall and Fred, because Fred sort of stonewalls it. And by him selling this, I'm thinking, wait a second, something else is going on here with this guy.
It's his understated performance again. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't, uh, he didn't know what the writers had in mind 3 weeks down the road, but there was always something going in the back of his mind. I mean, he really played this part almost method,
Yeah.
and he just gave himself fully to the role of Barnabas.
What
And that's what that, like, I'll say it again, that's his brilliance.
what did you think of the relationship between Barnabas and Carolyn? How creepy was that?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad that they retconned that after 1795 because yeah, that was really scary.
I agree with something Patrick had said. He said you can tell Carolyn enjoys the power. And it's weird. I agree. Carolyn is enjoying it. She's not, other than, until the point of having to spy on Vicky. That's sort of where she's like, I don't really want to spy on Vicky, but she does enjoy the knowledge of and the power. I'm with you. I'm sort of glad they got out of this through 1795 in every way. And they come back but the so the
I
sale.
mean, the way Nancy Barrett plays it is almost like it's a domestic violence situation. She is scared of Barnabas, and at the same time, like you just said, she likes him sending her on these James Bond missions.
Right? she's she's in, she's sort of enjoying being the apprentice, where Willie wasn't to a degree. She is enjoying it, and it's amazing to me. It's like, wow, this is really a change from Willie Loomis, and I'm sort of glad because I don't want someone to always be so reluctant to help Barnabas. I mean, if you can have a willing participant, that does sort of intensify the situation.
Absolutely.
What were your thoughts on the seance and then them going back into 1795?
Well, I mean, again, I didn't see it coming, and when it did, uh, I was thrown for a loop. I mean, I remember saying to my mom, when is he going to be turned into a vampire? Because it was like eternity before he became a vampire. But now, as an adult, you see that evolution of the character. You get to see Barnabas prior to the curse, what kind of person he was. Ben Stokes makes a comment that he wasn't that good before, but you don't see that. You see Barnabas as caring, he's loving, he loves his parents, he
Yeah,
really loves his mom, and he taught Ben how to read and write.
yeah. I think the one of the best things that happens in this, the biggest myth is that Barnabas, the original Barnabas, you know, Victoria believes the original Barnabas and Jeremiah hated each other, but we see that's not the case. They don't. And I love the performance, between Fred. And it's amazing. I think they both do a great job going off each other. And then when the duel happens, when the duel goes to happen, you're sort of going, "Oh my God, don't."
I agree. But I guess a side note, as a fanboy, Mitch Ryan would have been incredible
Yes, he was.
in the whole arc. I mean, Anthony George was good as Jeremiah, but
Yep.
he was a terrible Burke Devlin.
He was in a lot of degree. Here, I'll give him this much credit for it though. I don't think he tried to change Burke Devlin the way the actor we talked about.
Peter Turgeon.
Right. I don't think he tried to change Devlin the way Peter Turgeon tried to change Dave Woodard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
I agree with that to a point. I mean, they definitely softened the character up
They did.
after Mitch Ryan was fired.
Right. Because here's the thing. I can't, even though he does do a very Devlin thing and call London and check on Barnabas's backstory. That I love. If Ryan Mitchell is threatened by Vicky Winters to back off, I don't see him doing it. He might say he'll do it, but I don't see him doing it.
Well, yeah, Mitch Ryan had a lot of. He was an angry man. I mean, Burke Devlin was angry.
Yep.
If Mitch Ryan and Frid would have done the scene at the Blue Whale where Barnabas says, "I thrust and you parry," when they're talking about fencing, basically, it would have been it would have just been an entirely different scene because Mitch Ryan could, I mean, if Barnabas wasn't one of the undead, Mitch Ryan's Burke Devlin could have tore his head off. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right. I think if they have Mitch Ryan sitting there and he's describing that scene, I think Mitch Ryan would have stood up and knocked over the table. Like, really? You want to
Exactly.
right? You want to go? I think you're right. I think that's the best sort of different comparisons how one actor would have played it and the other did play it. You know, I totally agree with you. But 1795, we're introduced to Laura Parker's Angelique. What were your thoughts about her?
Well, I mean, it's Lara Parker. I've had a crush for 40 years. I mean, um, uh, I think Barnabas should have been with Angelique. Now that I've had, since 1982 to digest this whole story, I think he was more suited with her. Um, I just think he fell in love with the innocence of Josette,
Right.
and Angelique can go toe to toe with him. And Josette would have always been subservient to Barnabas.
Right.
Angelique was an equal.
Yeah.
And that would have suited him better, I think. And I think in the end, Barnabas admits that he really did love her. A lot of people say, "Oh, that he's just saying that because she's dying," but I don't agree with that. I think he finally saw her do something that was not selfish, and he realized that she had a heart.
Yeah, I do. I'm with you. I do think he loved her by the end. Now, do I think Angelique deserved a redemption arc? Yeah, no. Look, to me, Laura Parker forever. You guys can have your Samanthas all day long, but I will take Laura Parker's Angelique 7 days out of the week and 3 times on Sunday. She is the best television witch ever, bar none.
Absolutely, I agree. Her performance was one of a kind.
Yep.
And if Fred never would have told her in the audition that you're playing a witch, she may never have gotten the role.
Right. But it's a good thing he did. He did, because I mean, what a performance she gives. I love how I tell you, Thayer David cracks me up a bit as Ben Stokes, because when she says about turning Joshua into something, he goes, "Turn him into a jackass, a mule." He goes, "Because me and that jackass, we'd be doing stuff." I was like, "What?"
Yeah, Thayer is another one of your your hardworking actors. I mean, the guy could do anything.
He could.
And it's sad that he died so young.
Yeah. He was so ahead of his time. I mean, it just feels like all these actors for Dark Shadows, they weren't just right for their time. They were ahead of it. I mean, they knew how to just sell their ass off.
I agree. I'm a David Selby fan, so once David Selby shows up, it's game on. I mean, David Selby improved Frid's acting in scenes when they were together. I mean, he elevated it, and Frid rose to the occasion.
He did. I think Selby was maybe the challenge Fred needed to even, I don't I don't think, is Fred bad as Barnabas? No, never. But with Selby, it was sort of like a game of one-upsmanship, but it never felt that way though.
Well, Fred went to Dan Curtis and told him that he needed another villain on the show to to lessen his workload, because ABC was sending him out on the weekends for publicity tours. So he was working 4 to 5 days a week, and then he was working Saturday and Sunday too.
Yeah.
So, Fred needed some help, and David Selby was the guy. I mean, he has movie star looks. I mean, he has charm and wit, and David Selby in real life. I mean, the guy is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's an impeccable actor.
Yep.
I mean, out of all the cast members that I have met, I've never met him, and that's the only one that I really, at this point, want to meet.
Cool. I hope you get to meet him, man. That would be really cool. What did you think of? They sent, Barnabas shoots Angelique. He's a poor shot with that flintlock. He's no Solomon. He's no Solomon Kane. And Angelique, Laura Parker delivers the lines of the century and curses his ass. Bat comes through the window, bites him. What did you think of the curse sequence?
That whole scene is incredible.
It is.
Fred's shock when she gives her soliloquy, and then he hears something at the door, and then he opens the door and he sells it, even though the bat is hideous. it's a terrible effect, but Fred sells that where you don't really think about it. You don't think about how bad that effect is, because Fred is really out there selling his ass off.
And really, when I see the bat, what I think of most is Angelique's words she just said. I mean, her words, to me, they ring in your ears as this is going on.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just the range of the actors and actresses, that their words often, when there's maybe an effect that isn't the greatest thing, the words they speak ring out. And I think that's what Dark Shadows does best. It may not have, its effects are good, like really, to me, ahead of its time at times, but I love their words. Their words to me carry such heavy weight.
I mean, they had some of the best writers. I mean,
Yep.
The dialogue that Sam Hall wrote is incredible.
Yep.
I'm sure he had some hand in that. I'd have to go back and watch the end credits for that episode, but I'm sure Sam had something to do with that.
What did you think of, like you said, it feels like it takes forever at times for Barnabas to become a vampire in 1795, because they're telling this long story. And Barnabas is laying in bed. He's dying. Is it, even though you know what's coming in a sense, because you know he's going to become a vampire, is it heartbreaking to watch?
I mean, I guess I should say yes, but knowing what's going to happen to him, no,
Right, right,
because we already know he's not going anywhere. But
right.
it doesn't take away from the emotional weight of Fred's performance.
No, it doesn't. I think my favorite scene in 1795 was when Angelique tries to stake Barnabas, and he's just choking her, and he kills her.
And how shocked is he when she's not really dead?
Right, right, right. That's beautiful. He's really shocked, right? He's like, oh God. It's sort of like the oh shit expression of the show. Why?
Right. Fred used the word Angelique as a synonymous with oh shit. Instead of saying oh shit, he would sell that Angelique. You
Right,
know.
right. Yeah, yeah, he would. It just Angelique. When you say Angelique, it's sort of like saying the swear word without saying it. It's,
Correct.
it's so good. And what did you think of? So they put Vicky on trial for witchcraft. We all know she's not a witch, but Angelique, she when she reappears at the trial of Victoria Winters, I love the effect they use. She just materializes right outside the court.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that whole sequence is it's a lot of fun as a viewer.
It is.
Unfortunately, Roger Davis kind of ruins it for me. But other than that, I mean, when Angelique's on the stand, it's very powerful.
Right. So once we get out of 1795, to chalk up the body count of 1795, Abigail dies, Naomi dies, Sarah dies. Er, There's a lot of death. Angelique's curse is in full effect. It has killed the people Barnabas has loved. Joshua is the coldest man. That man is colder than Mr. Freeze.
I At the end though, he kind of gets softened up,
He,
Um, and when Louis Edmonds, when he realizes what his son has become, and he can't bring himself to kill him,
right.
it's heartbreaking. It's Shakespeare.
It is. I like that. What did you think that of the how he he grants every request Barnabas he tries to at least. He tries to get Vicky, a new trial. He does free Ben. So he grants these requests Barnabas give, or at least tries to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean that's more the softening up. I mean, I think Joshua kind of realizes I've been a dick for the last, 40 years of my life, and I think he tries to become a different person. It's that evolution. All the characters in Dark Shadows evolve just like a regular human being would,
They do.
and that's the beauty of a soap opera and of Dark Shadows in general.
So we come back from 1795. Vicky's back. She's got the rope burn around her neck, and Barnabas is flipping out. It's like a, a jackrabbit. He's sort of like jumping around, like, oh God, what does she know?
Yeah, nobody plays anxiety like Jonathan Frid. I mean, unfortunately he wasn't literally sweating, but because a vampire can't, but he should have been.
Right. If Barnabas could have sweated, you could have watered the lawn and then some. And
Absolutely.
so, but I love how you have Julia Grayson Hall. She's got a new haircut, and she's sort of taunting Barnabas, like, "What do you think she knows? She think how does it feel to not have all the power?"
uh Backing up a little bit, that's her real hair there. She
All
wore a
right,
wig prior
right.
to that.
My bad.
So
My
I
bad.
mean,
My
they
bad.
finally let her be herself for a change.
It's always I never realized that was a wig until you just said. I always thought that was her hair.
Yeah, that was a wig. For
Oh,
whatever reason, they didn't want her real hair there. But Barnabas, the character, comments on it. You've
right.
changed your hair, and that's some of the humor of the Dark Shadows writers.
It is, and it fits in, right? It's not something that's forced.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's believable.
Right. I love the fact that after this, you have he's taken Vicky. This is the only time he bites Victoria Winters on the neck, and finally he gets her in the car. Vicky's driving, and this is why you should not let someone you just bit drive your vehicle because, well, they'll they'll attempt to commit vehicular homicide.
Well, first of all, what kind of car were they in? Was it Herbie the Love Bug? Because Barnabas is so constrained in that front seat. I mean, and who comes out of the shadows? We thought we got rid of him, but hell, there's Roger Davis again. He's back.
Yep, Jeff Clark, as they say, but I think he's in the Herbie from Hell car. But that's what that is, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy. You're right. He looks so stuffed, and I love how Vicky's just like driving. And she's like, "Who's that coming out?" I'm like, "Oh God!" And then they get in a wreck. I'm thinking, "What just happened? You just wrecked the car, girl."
Ironically, later on in the series, we learn what a terrible driver Barnabas is when he hits Grant Douglas.
Listen, I think honestly, Barnabas got his driver's license out of the Cracker Jack box, man. He did. you know, he didn't go to the DMV. He just went to the store or had somebody go to the store for, hey, buy me a box of Cracker Jacks. Oh, here's my license. That's what happened. You're right. He tries to hit Grant Douglas, who's Quentin Collins, and he is the worst driver ever. Like, I don't know who taught. I had a suspect list on Facebook, and I put the top 5 people who taught Michael Myers from Halloween how to drive, and Barnabas was on that list.
I like that.
Because considering how bad Michael Myers tends to, like, he tried to run over a little girl. But so it's crazy that we get introduced to a doctor. Oh, God, I'm horrible now. So we get introduced to a new character. We have Julia and the other doctor, Dr. Lane, Dr. Eric Lane,
Yep,
in
yep, yeah.
fighting over Barnabas. Lane somewhat helps get rid of the vampirism for a bit, but he needs a permanent solution because this is only a temporary one. What were your thoughts on that?
I'm gonna be honest. That storyline's not one of my favorites. I love Addison Powell because he's so theatrical,
Yep.
but the Adam storyline was just drug out a little bit too long. But that scene in the hospital when Barnabas opens up the drapes and it's sunlight,
Right.
that scene is in the top 10.
I think it's magical because you're thinking, man, this guy cannot just catch a break. At this point, you're wanting him cured too. That's what helps. It's like you're wanting this guy to get some sort of resolution, at least somewhat, to have a chance, and a chance is offered. There's at least a glimmer of hope, and I think that's what's so good about Addison Powell's character here. He's providing it.
But he's the vehicle for a transition in story, and
Right.
people make fun of him all the time, but I think he was a fine actor.
I do think they could have had him in other roles other than this. I know he played the judge, in 1795. But I do wish Addison Powell would have got to do more stuff with Dark Shadows, because I agree with you. I actually like his performance. And here's the thing too. You got to help me out with this. So okay, Julia and Lang believe in vampires because they just cured one in a sense, but they don't believe in witches. Barnabas is literally trying to sell them a song, and like I feel like Barnabas is like a used car salesman at this point. He's like trying to convince these two people, hey, there's a witch.
Yeah, I think those are some good episodes in general.
They are.
When you get the three of them together, Grayson Hall, Frid, and Addison Powell, you get some high energy performances. They're a lot of fun.
You do. I love the fact that they're doubting him. I do. I think it's so good because you're thinking, you're sort of, even though there's a witch, we just saw 1795. You're sort of understanding their side of it because they weren't there. They didn't live that. Why should they believe in that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm on board with your premise.
One of my favorite lines from Stokes when he's introduced, when Barnabas is asked for the medallion to protect from witchcraft. He goes, well, I'll show you the medallion if you show me the witch. Right?
Yeah, when that portrait shows up in the drawing room, it's incredible.
It is. I love how they have Vicky buys it at an antique shop. And she brings it back. It's I just think it's amazing that they have her bring it back, and it's now in the great house, and Roger wants to buy it, so Stokes doesn't buy it.
Lara Parker's and Jerry Lacey's scenes in those episodes are some of the funnest. He's playing full-blown Humphrey Bogart, and she is film noir seductress. It's really good.
She is. I love how they're having this sort of side story with you're right, with Jerry Lacey and Nancy Barrett. It is really, really good, and also Laura Parker as well.
Yeah, I like those three a lot. I hate Trask, but I like Tony Peterson.
Have you ever seen Solomon Kane?
No, I haven't.
Okay. When you see Solomon Kane, I swear Jerry Lacey could have played Solomon Kane. The way they have him dressed up as Trask, it almost looks like the character of Solomon Kane. But, so now the only difference is Solomon Kane was a legitimate witch hunter.
Gotcha.
And well, Trask wasn't. But I'll say this: if you put that pistol in Solomon Kane's hand and not Barnabas, we're not having any conversations about a curse. He would have. He's a character who's crafted after the finest swordsmen and finest pistoliers in Europe. So amazing pulp character. But
have you seen Witchfinder General with Vincent Price?
No, I have not.
He plays the real life witch hunter Matthew Hopkins, and it's a terrifying hour and 20 minutes. I mean, this is probably Price's best performance in his latter half of his career. He is so evil, and he does stuff that you don't expect Vincent Price to do. You should check that movie out. It's really, really good.
I will try to find it. It sounds really good. I'd love to watch stuff like that. So, what did you think of? We sort of talked about Quentin a little bit, but finally, we're sort of going to jump ahead a bit. Dave, Jonathan Frid, Barnabas Collins, Quentin Collins. What did you think of the interaction together between those two?
Well, that episode where Barnabas has his back to Quentin and he turns around, he's got a sword in his neck.
Right.
is one of my all-time favorites, and I often wonder, well, you're not going to kill him that way. You can't kill a vampire that way. So, what would have happened if he would have ran him through?
Right.
That scene is one of that scene's in the top 10 as well. I love that whole scene. It's awesome.
You're almost wishing, well, don't walk in, Judith. Don't walk in.
I just love Selby's mannerisms, and
Yep.
Fred is acting nervous when he turns around and the sword's there. It's a tour de force.
Everything Fred is doing of Barnabas, he's playing the time traveling investigator. He has to investigate Quentin's, like, is this guy like evil or isn't he? And I love right away when I meet Quentin, I can't hate David Selby's character. No matter what they do, I can't hate this character. He's so charming. He's a womanizer.
And he's a drunk.
Right? It's like, dude, this is like your, people like your uncle you want to hang out with on the weekend. It's like what?
Which is why Jameson loved him so much.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, Quentin Collins never met a brandy sniffer that he didn't enjoy.
True. I don't know how many people catch this, but Nancy Barrett, who's playing Traska's daughter, Charity, right? She says something. I don't know how many people catch this. She says, "I'm not one." I think she says the line, "I'm not one of your, why don't you go to town and see one of your sluts?" What? It was such a good line too,
and it was believable.
It was.
And in classic Dark Shadows fashion, they soften Quentin up after the werewolf curse, and he evolves into the anti-hero.
Yeah. What did you think of Magda and the Gypsies?
Well, I love that character.
I did too.
I think Magda is the perfect foil and slash Renfield for Barnabas. I mean, she's also very snarky and witty, but she's worried about Sandor, so she goes along with it.
Yeah.
Just a lot of fun. All the Magda storyline is fun.
It is. My favorite part is she gets put on trial by her. The Gypsies have a code and rules, and I love that part of it. That's my favorite part of it. It's like, wow, they really do have rules. They have some sort of law and order to their own sort of little society, which is crazy. But when we meet Count Andreas Patofe, what were your thoughts on this character? Sarah David is finally getting to play another heel.
Well, Patofe is the greatest villain in the entire series. He's a super villain.
Yeah.
He has all this power, and that rivals Barnabas for sure. And maybe, we don't know, he might be more powerful than Angelique.
Yeah.
And it takes 3 people to take him down, and we really don't ever know if he's dead.
Right. What's crazy is, even though he's in pursuit of his hand, he doesn't need the hand because he already has powers. He wants it. It's something. It's his. It's something the Gypsies. He did not want to be a werewolf himself anymore. The Gypsies took his hand to remove the curse. Okay, you want the curse removed? You're giving us your hand. We'll sever it. We'll chop it off. But I always got this feeling that Patofe sweated the gypsies. He was afraid of them in some way.
Oh yeah, he did not like King Johnny Romano,
Oh, he did not.
and Garth Blackwood was the only other person that frightened him.
Yep.
You know, I love Aristide. I mean, Michael Stroka is fantastic. I had a short interaction with him at a Dark Shadows festival, and was just as lovely as you would expect him to be. He
Cool.
passed away like 2 years after that, but yeah, Michael Stroka was he was a good actor, and I think after 1897 he was underutilized.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's because he didn't want to do the show anymore or they didn't have a place for him.
I think sometimes it's hard to find, keep finding different characters for certain actors. I'll say this. I do think there's other things they could have had him do in the series, but you're right. Him being part of the Leviathan arc, I felt it just didn't seem right to me. Like you were just adding a character to add it for adding's sake. But what did you make of Barnabas and the Leviathan arc?
Well, I mean, it gave Frid a chance to be evil again.
Yeah.
So from an actor standpoint, I mean, it was a nice part to have for a couple months. And as a viewer, I mean, seeing Barnabas evil again is chilling, and he's all in.
Yeah.
And you don't even know until months later that he's all in because they fooled him and told him they have Josette. But when they want him to kill Julia Hoffman, that's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
And he won't do it.
I love my favorite part of the Leviathan arc is the shot. I'm still to this day, every time I go back through the coffin box set, I'm still shocked by Sky Rumson's heel turn. It's one of the best heel turns I've ever seen.
Yeah, that episode where Sky walks in with a torch ready to burn Angelique that's a lot of fun.
It is.
But I didn't miss him when Barnabas killed him.
No, I didn't even. You were sort of hoping Angelique would do it, but the fact that Fred does it, it's like, oh god. It's like, dude, you've pushed your luck one too many times now.
Jeffrey Scott was a good actor in the
Yes.
80s, but in the 70s he was too wooden. And I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get another part. He was just too wooden in his portrayal. Now when he was in Dynasty,
Yeah.
the guy was awesome. But
Yeah.
Jeffrey Scott just wasn't he didn't have enough maturity yet as an actor, I don't think. But I don't want to bag on him. He's passed, and
What did you think of finally Barnabas when he smashes the Leviathan box? Jeb is a baby face now. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I love that scene. I mean, the look on Nicholas Blair's face when Jeb pulls Carolyn out of the way and yells for Barnabas, and he shows up with the cane and just beats the hell out of that thing. It felt so good as a viewer because that's what you've wanted to happen for months. And like I said, to see Nicholas Blair realize that he's failed again, is awesome.
What did you think of Barnabas going back to, well, not going back to, but going through parallel time, the parallel time arc?
I loved the idea of there being a room somewhere else that you saw the people that you know and love, but they're not themselves.
Right.
And when he finally crossed over, I mean, some of those early episodes in that arc are very they're a lot of fun. Unfortunately, he had to go away to make the movie, so he got chained in the coffin for, 60 days. But when he comes back, he takes care of John Yeager pretty well.
He does. I actually love Cyrus Longworth, John Yeager, the villain. It was Jekyll and Hyde, sure, but it was very different. I love the fact that they pulled off that storyline in parallel time. What were your thoughts on him, Yeager?
Well, Chris Pennock is
Yep.
one of the greats.
Yep.
And he played that part almost like we would see Christopher Reeve play Superman 8 years later. There was a definite difference between Cyrus and John, and Pennock was able to turn that on at a whim. And Yeager was frightening. I mean, he beat the hell out of Buffy.
Yep.
Harrington, it's implied he rapes her,
Yeah.
which was that was big for 1970s, early 70s television.
Yeah.
Chris is one of my favorites. It was a joy having him friend me on Twitter. That was was just incredible when he followed my Twitter page. I miss Chris because I enjoyed his commentary on Twitter a lot.
Yeah. He was a hell of an actor. I never met him in person or nothing, but he knew how to just turn it on in an instant. And one of my favorite portrayals is actually him as Gabriel in the wheelchair, where he's just squeezing that ball, and it's like, man, there's something sinister behind that.
Yeah, that was what was good about him. He could do all those different range of emotions.
Yep. Yep. What did you think of? You had Alexis and Angelique. So Laura Parker got to play twins.
That scene when they're in the mausoleum and they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
So Angelique's in the coffin, Alexis is standing over the body. That's genuinely chilling. Parker does. It's incredible what she does in that scene, and also like her, Alexis is this sweet and innocent person, and Angelique is diabolical, and she sleeps with everybody at the Great House. I mean, you know, um, it's implied she has an affair with Roger. Definitely Bruno, and that guy that ghost that came back. I can't think of his name, but he had a real sharp leisure suit on. I can't think of his name. Damian Edwards. He has an affair. She has an affair with Damian Edwards. It's a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun.
What did you think of? So Angelique's, when we finally go back and meet Judah Zachary, what did you think of that and Angelique's backstory?
I'm conflicted on how I feel about that.
Right.
I mean, it essentially means that she's not really Angelique Bouchard.
Right.
She's Miranda Duval.
Right.
So everything that we've known for 3 years at that point is kind of retconned.
Right.
And I'm just conflicted. I'm not going to say I don't like it, but, I don't know. From an audience standpoint, it was, looking back on it now, I mean, it's quite a left turn that was unexpected.
I think the story is interesting as a whole. I love the fact that they're introducing a heavy warlock, but in all due respect to the people who wrote the story, who performed it, I think they all did a great job. No offense to them, but for me, the heel, the heel's Angelique. You know what I mean? I get they're writing her redemption story, but to me, writing Angelique a redemption story is like writing Michael Myers a redemption story. You just don't do it. You just don't do it. But that's just how I feel about it. So, yeah. Goodness. Is there anything you want to add before we go, man?
Oh, I mean, I've had a love affair with Dark Shadows since 1982 when it was on a UHF station in Detroit. I mean, I've bought the videotapes, bought the DVDs, bought the coffin box set. Now I watch them on Tubi. I mean, it's just an enduring. I mean, they're friends. I mean, I always identify with Barnabas from the very beginning because I was a loner myself when I was a kid. Had a lot of health problems. I understood where he was coming from. He just wanted his family to accept him. I understood that. And, a lot of people see other parallels in the Barnabas portrayal, and they're there. But, this is how I interpret it. And I love it. I mean, I love Jonathan. I mean, I wrote a letter to him when I was 12 years old demanding his copy of House of Dark Shadows mailed to me. And Jonathan wrote me back, sent me back a huge envelope with a 8x10 picture autographed. And it said my name. It said to me, Jonathan Frid. So he read the letter, and I hope he got a chuckle out of it, because I met him a year later and I didn't bring it up. So I mean, it's been a great time talking to you. I mean, you're a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. I'd like to get Barnabas on this with us, the three of us, to maybe dissect 1897.
That we just need to get together and have a Superman discussion too. So,
Well, I love Superman.
so and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sit back and let you two guys talk. So I could just, for once, be quiet. All right. First of all, at Fred Barnabas, thank you so much for giving me your time, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on here and talking to me about your passion for Dark Shadows. I love it, man, because we're both Dark Shadows fans, as you said. Guys, go give at Fred Barnabas a follow on Twitter. He's at Fred Barnabas. Thank you so much, man. You have a great night.
Take care, buddy. Hope to talk to you soon.
Yep, you take care too. Bye.
Bye.